Hello children, welcome to your English class, and today we're going to appreciate a new story, packing. Packing is something that we do before we set out on a trip to some place. Well, this story is all about packing. How many of you enjoy watching packing before we set out on a trip? Some people might feel it is quite exciting to pack the things before we start on our journey, and some people, unfortunately, they find it quite encumbering, means very tiresome and heavy work, a lengthy process, collecting all the things and set them in a proper way in the bags or the suitcases and all. So, well, then what about the narrator experience while packing? Let's know in his own words. So, the story that we are going to discuss is packing. But before we get into the story, it's time to learn new words. Yeah, here we have a phrase, pride myself on. Pride myself on is a phrase which means I'm proud of something. I pride myself on my running, means I'm really proud of my running. So fast I run. And then fell into. Fell into, here it has a different meaning in the lesson. Fell into means accepted. In this story, fell into means accepted. Uncanny. If something is uncanny, it is quite strange or weird, abnormal, very strange, typical, irregular. That is uncanny. And potter about. If you're pottering about, means you're doing something silly or unimportant. So potter about means doing unimportant things. Ain't. Ain't is usually old fashioned English and means aren't. So ain't I means aren't I. Rummaged. When you rummage, what do you do? You search hurriedly or carelessly. You search for something hurry-burriedly, then that is called rummaging. Suppose your school bus is coming in 2-3 minutes, still you're dressing up for your school, you're not finding your tie, and how you will do? You just pick out all the things and you throw them here and hither and thither in a hurried way. So, searching hurriedly and carelessly, making it a mess, is called rummage. Reigned. Reigned means actually it is ruled. Here it might be it is lasted. Reigned means ruled. In the story, in other way, it is lasted to some extent. Slammed. We slam the doors. Slamming means striking hard against something. Slamming. Light-heartedly. Light-heartedly means not in a very serious manner. When you do something, if you do it without much seriousness, that is called light-heartedly, in a joyful way, without much seriousness. So that is light-heartedly, lacking seriousness. Squash. When you squash something, you press or you crush it forcefully so that that mass will be flattened. Suppose when you squash a tomato, you press it into pulp. All the pulp will come out of the fruit or the tomato. That is squash. The next word is squirm. Squirm means to turn or twist your body like a snake. If someone is tickling you when you're lying on a bed or a floor, how you turn your body, or even when you're in extreme stomach pain or something, you just you roll on the floor or the ground or on the bed, turning or twisting. So squirming means to twist one's body with snake-like motions. Indignantly. Indignantly means very angry. When you're indignant, you're very angry. Scrape. Scraping means if some paint is there, or some gum or some paint dried up on a plate, what do you do to remove that? You pick up some tool like a screwdriver or a spoon or something, so that you just put it on it, and with that you can use some tool to remove that material or that substance. That is what we call scraping. You can see in the picture something stuck to the plate, and he is using some knife to remove all that. So what he is doing there is scraping. Tumble. Tumble is a simple word which means to fall down. Tumble means to fall. So now let's get into the lesson. Packing. Now let's get into the lesson. Packing. I said outpack. I rather pride myself on my packing. Packing is one of those many things that I feel I know more about than any other person living. It surprises me myself sometimes how many such things there are. I impressed the fact upon George and Harris and told them that they had better leave the whole matter entirely to me. They fell into the suggestion with a readiness. There is something uncanny about it. George spread himself over the easy chair and Harris cocked his legs on the table. The narrator says, he said, I would pack. Listen, I'll do the packing work, he said. And the narrator says he's very much proud of his skill of packing, and he feels packing is one of many things that he feels he knows more about than any other person living on this earth. So, according to the narrator or the speaker, he knows many things, including packing. He knows many things and he has many skills. Better skill. He is better skilled at many things than any other person living on this earth. That is what the feeling of the speaker. The speaker feels that there are so many things that he knows far better than any other person living on this earth. So confident he is about his skills and talents. And sometimes when he thinks of his own abilities, he feels that, how do I know all these things better than each and everyone on this earth? And when it came to the question of packing, he, he told George and Harris, see, you leave the entire matter to me. Which matter? Packing. And they fell into the suggestion with a readiness that had something uncanny about it. And when the speaker asked George and Harris, hey, you people just move aside. I'll look after the matter. I myself will pack the things for the trip. Then they didn't oppose, simply they accepted. And what they said, they just agreed and just they moved aside. With a readiness, the moment he asked them, they accepted. Okay, you do it. And they sat aside, and that was something strange and weird, because whenever he asked them, usually they don't agree with him that easily. But this time, when the speaker asked them to move aside so that he could pack the entire things, they just, the moment he asked, they accepted and they moved about. And George, he sat on an easy chair, while Harris, he sat in a position that his legs are cocking on the table. So now, George and Harris moved away from that packing work. Who took up the responsibility of packing? Yes, the speaker took up the responsibility of the packing. This was hardly what I intended. What I had meant, of course, was that I should boss the job and that Harris and George should potter about under my directions. I pushing them aside every now and then with, oh, you let me do it. There you are, simple enough, really teaching them, as you might say. But they taking it in the way they did irritated me. There is nothing does irritate me more than seeing other people sitting about doing nothing when I'm working. When the speaker asked George and Harris to stand aside, they accepted and they moved aside. They settled on chairs and tables, leaving the entire thing to the speaker. But the speaker's intention was different. He didn't expect that. When he said, I would look after the matter, he actually wanted to boss the job. Means he wanted to be the boss and he wanted George and Harris to be his minions, to do all the things under his directions. That task of packing would be done. That's what he thought. And every now and then, oh, here, let me do it. There you're, simple enough. There you are. Like that, he wanted to comment on them. While Harris and George doing the things of packing, he wanted to guide them. He wanted to direct them like a boss and remarking them positively, negatively, encouraging. That's what he really wanted. But when he said that, I would see the matter of packing, they simply left him and they sat aside. And that really irritated our speaker. What irritated speaker? George and Harris leaving the entire task of packing to the speaker and moving away from the task really irritated him. And the speaker is not a person to stand. The speaker is not a person to bear to see if anyone simply sitting in front of him and watching him while he is working. That's what now George and Harris were doing. So he got really angry and so much irritation he got. I lived with a man once who used to make me mad that way. He would loll on the sofa and watch me doing things by the hour together. He said it did him real good to look on at me messing about. Now I'm not like that. I can't sit still and see another man slaving and working. I want to get up and superintend and walk around with my hands in my pockets and tell him what to do. It's my energetic nature. I can't help it. The speaker further says, once he had lived with some other person, and that other person he almost made him mad. Why? The other person with whom the speaker stayed for some time long back, he had the habit of simply lying on the sofa and watching the speaker while he is doing the work. And he would lie on the sofa for hours together and he would watch him doing the same. But the speaker would never really like anyone to watch him, to simply sit and watch him while he is doing some work. And that man, he used to tell the speaker that was for him, that was really a very good experience while the speaker was doing the things, making a mess of it. But the speaker says, I'm not the one like that. I can't sit still. If someone is working, I can't sit still. I cannot see another man slaving and working. I just don't have the habit of giving the entire work to other people, and when they work hard to see and enjoy. I don't want to see. I don't want to see anyone working. I cannot sit idle. At the same time, if while I'm working, I don't want anyone to sit idle and to look at me. But I want to get up. I won't sit idle. I will get up and I will superintend. I will supervise the things and I will walk around with my hands in my pockets like a boss, and I would like to tell what is right and what is wrong. That is my nature. I can't help it. But here, what happened? Harris and George. In the beginning, Harris and George, they were trying to pack the things for the trip. Then the speaker arrived there, and when he found George and Harris were packing, he said, Hey, I will do the task of packing. I'm very better in packing, he said. And when they heard this, they just left the task to him and they went away from the work and they sat on their own places. But what actually the speaker wanted here, he wanted to superintendent. He wanted to oversee the work of George and Harris, and like a boss, he wanted to suggest them. He wanted to show them how to do certain things. He wanted to correct them and he wanted to train them in packing. But they didn't understand his intention. They simply left the task to him or to his fate and they sat on armchairs and all. And now he did not say anything but started the packing. He didn't call them again. The speaker alone started packing, and he thought it would be over in no time, but it took longer time than he guessed. And finally, he finished packing everything in the bag, and then he sat on the bag and finally strapped it, closed it. "Aren't you going to put the boots in?" said Harris. And I looked around. I looked around and found I had forgotten them. When everything was over, when packing is over, when he closed the bag, and then Harry said, what he said, he asked, "Aren't you going to put the boots in? Are you not going to put the boots inside the bag?" Then he looked around, and boots are there still lying on the floor, means they have not been packed. That's just like Harris. This is what the nature of Harris. He couldn't have said a word until I had got the bag shut and strapped, of course. See, he waited all the time, and when I finished my packing and closed the bag, then he told me that boots are there still to be packed. And George laughed. One of those irritating, senseless laughs of his. This kind of nature, these people, George and Harris, they are just like that. They irritate me so much. I opened the bag and packed the boots in. And then, just as I was going to close it, a horrible idea occurred to me. Had I packed my toothbrush? I don't know how it is, but I never do know whether I have packed my toothbrush. My toothbrush is a thing that haunts me when I'm traveling and makes my life a misery. I dream that I haven't packed it and wake up in a cold perspiration and get out of bed and hunt for it. And in the morning, I pack it before I have used it and have to unpack again to get it. And it is always the last thing I turn out of the bag. And then I repack and forget and have to rush upstairs for it at the last moment and carry it to the railway station, wrapped up in my pocket handkerchief. So when reminded him, Harris reminded him to pack the boots, he took the boots and he packed everything inside the bag, and just he was about to close, then he got it out. What? Had I packed my toothbrush? Then he remembered something. What? Whether he packed his toothbrush or not. The speaker has a habit of forgetting his toothbrush. All the time. How it happens, he too doesn't know. But whenever they go on a trip, he packs everything but forgets his toothbrush. And it is something that really haunts him like a devil in times of traveling, especially. Uh, Even before the day of the trip, he would dream. In the dream also, he would forget his toothbrush, and suddenly he wakes up, and then he understands that it is a dream, but he immediately gets that toothbrush and he pack it inside the bag even before he used it that morning. Again, when he wants to use it, again he has to open the entire packing to get the toothbrush out of the bag. And it happened so many times. Ultimately, finally, he would forget the toothbrush at home. And again, in the last moment, he would get into the home and he would get it wrapping in his kerchief and pushing it into his pockets. He would run to the railway station. So much story the speaker has, so much experiences he had with his toothbrush. That's why This time he remembered once again, just before uh, he packed the boots and was about to close the bag, he remembered his toothbrush. Of course, I had to turn every mortal thing out now. But how to know whether the brush is there inside the packing? There is no other way. He picked out all the things from the bag again. He couldn't find it. He rummaged the things up into much the same state that they must have been before the world was created and when chaos reigned. In order to find his toothbrush, the speaker removed all the things hurriedly. He started searching hurriedly for his toothbrush and he made a mess of all the things. He removed each and every item from the bag, as you can see in the picture. All the things lying around, and it was all something like again from to the beginning state. He said, when the world, even before the world was created, when the world was created, our earth is not like this. Man, we changed the earth in a proper order. Uh, in the same way, a packing was decent enough, but now entire packing was totally what you call spoiled and destroyed. And first, the poet found George's toothbrush and Harry's toothbrush 18 times, but he couldn't find his own toothbrush. He put the things back one by one and held everything up and shook it. Now he started putting all the things inside the packing one by one. Every time he is lifting up each and every item and he is shaking. Then finally he found his toothbrush inside a boot and he repacked once more. One more time he packed everything. When he had finished, George asked if the soap was in. When he finished his packing, then George was asking, is soap is there inside the packing? Have you kept the soap? Then the speaker said, I don't care a hang whether the soap was in or whether it was not. And I slammed the bag and shut and strapped it and found that I had packed my spectacles in it. Then angrily he said, I don't care whether the soap is there inside the bag or not. Saying so, angrily he shut the bag and he closed it. Then he understood that he packed even his spectacles inside the packing. The speaker had to reopen it. It got shut up finally at 10:05 p.m. At night 10:05. Finally, the bag was closed. He opened, he took out his glasses or spectacles, and again he packed everything for the third time. And then there remained the hampers to do. Harry said that we should be wanting to start in less than 12 hours time and thought that he and George had better to do the rest, and I agreed and sat down and they had a go. Then outside there were some hampers. Hampers are the baskets. Food carrying baskets are there. And Harry said, we should be wanting to start in less than 12 hours. Just 12 hours time is left for us. And he said, he and George will do the remaining packing, and the speaker agreed and he sat down. Now they had a go. Now they started packing the rest of the things. So now George and Harris, they started working on packing for the trip. They were left over with some food items packing. But they began in a light-hearted spirit, means very jovially, not taking the task seriously, making fun. They're packing the things, evidently intending to show me how to do it. So here the speaker is also there in the same room. Now he is resting on the chair, and they're just wantedly they're making a show, as if they're telling, as if they're teaching or showing him how to pack the things. But the speaker made no comment. He just was waiting. With the exception of George, without George, Harris is the worst packer in this world. That is what the speaker's opinion. Okay, George can do some packing considerably, but Harris, he doesn't know anything in packing. And when the speaker looked at the piles of plates and cups and kettles, bottles, jars, pies, towels, cakes, and tomatoes, and all the food stuff and vessels and the things, the speaker felt, yes, very soon something very exciting is going to happen. That's what the speaker's expectation. It did, means as he expected, it really happened. What? Something exciting happened there in the room. How they started with breaking a cup. As they're packing the things, they started with breaking a cup. As they started the work of packing, they broke a cup. That was the first thing they did. They did that just to show you what they could do and to get you interested. Just uh, simply or intentionally, they broke the cup. They broke the cup to show that what they could do. Then Harris packed the strawberry jam on top of a tomato. While packing, first Harris put some tomatoes and over it he put some strawberry jam that was packed on a bottle or something. As a result, what happened? Those tomatoes were squashed. Press it to press it to the pulse, and all the pulse inside the tomatoes they came out. And they had to pick out the tomato with a teaspoon. Then they had to scrape. They took this teaspoon and they scraped the tomato pulse that got stuck to the strawberry jam jar. And then George, what he did, he trod on the butter. He walked on the butter. Uh, he laid a step on the butter. The speaker was watching all this, but he didn't say anything. He went over and sat on the edge of the table watching them, and they, they did feel his presence. He was silently watching them while they were doing what they were doing. They were breaking cups and they were uh, trotting or stepping upon the different things they are packing. So he's watching, and uh, it irritated those who were working. George and Harris were greatly irritated by his silent presence and watching everything they were doing. And it made them nervous and excited. When someone is watching at you while you're doing something, naturally you may get some sort of nervousness or a feeling that someone is looking at you. In such situations, though you're good at doing something, you may not be able to do. That's what happening there. And they stepped on things and put things behind them, and then they couldn't find when they wanted them. They were stepping on the things they're packing, and they're keeping the things behind them, and they're forgetting and looking all over the room. And what they did, they packed pies. You can see the pie cakes, and at the bottom of that basket or hamper, and put heavy things on the top. What happens? All those pies were smashed. They upset salt over everything, and as for the butter, I never saw two men do more with 1 and 2 pence worth of butter in whole life than they did. What else they did? They dropped salt over everything, and with the butter. The speaker says that butter was just 1 and 2 pence worth butter, a small amount of butter, and with that butter, they did a great show. And he didn't see such a great show with some simple piece of butter in his life. After George had got it off his slipper, he stepped on that butter, and then he took it off his slipper, and they tried to put it in the kettle first. But that butter piece, it wouldn't go inside the kettle. Some part of the butter went inside. They were trying to put the entire thing inside into the kettle, but it would neither go inside nor it would come out. Finally, what they did, they scraped it out at last using some spoon or some other tool and put it down on a chair. After that, they took out that butter and they put it on a chair, and without knowing that, Harry sat on it. Unintentionally, it happened. And what happened? Butter stuck to him. And then both went looking for it all over the room. Harris and George just started looking for the butter, where it is actually. It is at the back of Harris. I'll take my oath. I put it down on the chair, said George, staring at the empty seat. George was telling, I swear, I promise. I put that butter on that chair only. Then Harry said, Yes, yes, I saw you do it myself, not a minute ago. Yes, I too saw. Just a minute ago you were keeping there when I saw. Then they started round the room again looking for it, and then they met again in the center and stared at one another. They were looking all over, but they couldn't find. Most extraordinary thing I ever heard of, said George. Really, very extraordinary thing. How come that it disappears? We are all three are here only. Just a minute before, the butter was kept on the chair. Now where it has gone? So mysterious, said Harris. Then George got round at the back of Harris and saw it. When accidentally George went back of Harris, there he saw the butter. Why, here it is all the time, he exclaimed indignantly, very angrily, he said. Why, here it is all the time. Where? Cried Harris, spinning round. He was running. Stand still, can't you? Roared George, flying after him. Wait, wait, stand properly. Then uh, George took out that piece of butter from the back of Harris, and they got it off and packed it in the teapot. Montmorency was in it all, of course. Montmorency's ambition in life is to get in the way and be sworn at. If he can swarm in anywhere where he particularly is not wanted, and be a perfect nuisance and make people mad and have things thrown at his head, then he feels his day hasn't been wasted. In this paragraph, the speaker is talking about their dog, Montmorency. What kind of dog it was? The dog's ambition itself to get in the way and be sworn at. Where people don't want its presence, there only it will make its presence, and then it will make the people scold it. And where people don't expect him, it would come and squirm. How a dog make rounds with his body, holding its legs up, squirming, twisting its body on the ground, lying, and making a perfect nuisance, and then making people so irritated, becoming mad, and then until people throw some things, whatever they get into their hands at this dog, then only it won't leave that room, and then he feels, yes, my day is not wasted. That kind of dog they had at their home. Montmorency is a dog. It always interferes, enters the workspace, disturbs the people, spoils the things, makes the people angry, and move away from the place when it gets sufficient punishment in words and corporal punishment. To get somebody to stumble over him and curse him steadily for an hour is his highest aim and object. What is the topmost goal of the dog? To go into somebody's legs and making people stumble over him. You are doing busily some work, walking here and there, and all of a sudden the dog gets into your legs. What happens? You will fall it on. You fall down on it. Then you become angry, and you curse it. You scold it. That is that the dog wants that. He wants to disturb, and then he wants to make the people angry. He wants people curse him, shout on him, then it feels happy. He came and sat down on things. So the dog finally entered the scene. As George and Harris were packing things, it came and sat down on the things, just when they were wanted to be packed. And he labored under the fixed belief that whenever Harris or George reached out their hand for anything, it was his cold, damp nose that they wanted. And while they were packing, Harris and George, whenever they reached their hands to pick up the things that they want to pack, the dog believed that they were stretching their hands only to touch its soft, cold, damp nose. And then he put his leg into the jam, and he worried the teaspoons. He disturbed the teaspoons, and uh, there were lemons, and it pretended as the lemons were rats. Means what a dog does when it finds rats, it chases them. In the same way, this dog also it's playing with the lemons and got into the hamper. While playing, it went into the basket and killed three of them. It killed three rats. Who are the rats here? Those lemons only. And Harris could land him with the frying pan. Then Harris came with a frying pan in his hand to beat it. Harris said, I encouraged him. Harris simply complained that the speaker only encouraged the dog to do so. But the speaker says he didn't encourage the dog at all. The dog was just like that. It didn't require any encouragement or any motivation from anyone. That quality naturally is there in that dog right from its birth, and it does such things only. It irritates the people. with its unwanted presence. So by the time that packing was done, it was almost 12:50, 10 to 1 in the midnight early morning, and Harry sat on the big hamper. After packing, Harry sat on the big basket and said he hoped nothing would be found broken. I'm sitting on this hamper, but I hope that everything would be safe, nothing will be broken. Then George said, if anything was broken, it was broken. Leave it. Ah, no problem. If anything breaks, let it break. What we can do? He also said he was ready for bed. And George said, now I feel like sleeping. We were all ready for bed. And in fact, even the speaker, George, Harris, all the three, they were feeling like going to bed. Harris was to sleep with us that night. So Harris was also sleeping with George and the speaker. And they went upstairs, all the three. We tossed for beds, and Harris had to sleep with me. Then they had toss for choosing beds. In that, Harris had to sleep with the speaker. Do you prefer the inside or the outside, Jay? Asked who Harris asked. Then the speaker said, I generally prefer to sleep inside a bed. Then Harry said, oh, inside, it's very odd, unpleasant. Then George said, what time shall I wake you fellows? Then George said, what time I should wake you up? Harry said, 7. Then the speaker said, no, 6, because I wanted to write some letters, he said. And on that timing fixing, Harris and the speaker had a row, means they had a dispute or a quarrel over it. But at last, they split the difference. Both agreed at 6:30. It was neither 6 nor 7. 6:30. Wake us at 6:30, George, who said. Both Harris and the speaker told George to wake them up at 6:30 in the morning. George made no answer. When there was no reply from George, these people went to his bed. On going over what they saw, that he had been asleep for some time. These two were fighting. Meanwhile, he went into sleep. So, these two placed the bath where he could tumble into it, getting out in the morning, and went to bed. So, bathtub. They arranged the bathtub, means they placed the bath, means they filled that bathtub with water so that it would be ready in the morning when George got up, because George was going to uh, get up first. That's all about packing. A lot of mess, confusion, chaos in making packing for their trip. Hope you enjoyed this simple episode of packing, and you'll be getting summary of this episode from my side, and you are supposed to write the answers for the questions given in your textbook. Okay, we'll meet again in another session with a new lesson. Thank you.